Hello and welcome to the 5-minute teaching development workshop on assessing critical thinking on exams. This presentation is brought to you by Ashley Castleberry, Assistant Professor and Director of Assessment at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences College of Pharmacy. Critical thinking is something we all want for our students. Though the definition varies widely, we will define critical thinking as this: a reasoned and reflective consideration of evidence in a particular context in order to make a judgment. This skill is not only important for us as teachers, but also highly valued by the employers who will be one day hiring our students. So if we want our students to have these skills, we must understand how these skills develop so we can use teaching approaches that enable students to build these skills and then assess that students are developing critical thinking skills. So how do we assess critical thinking? It's not as easy as assessing content knowledge, but it can be done. Content knowledge is the low end of the hierarchy of Bloom's taxonomy, which measures level of cognitive thinking. Critical thinking will be considered high-level thinking at the levels of application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Some would say that critical thinking cannot be measured using multiple choice items, yet research suggests this can be done when items are carefully designed. Let's look at some ways to transform lower-level Bloom's into items that can measure critical thinking. Require multiple steps of thinking to answer the question. Make the students pull pieces of information together to arrive at the best answer. Comparing and contrasting requires this level of thinking, as well as having students assess the value of this information given in the question. Make them discern which piece of information are necessary to solve the problem. Use cases or scenarios to create questions that build upon each other. By building upon content-related questions, you can walk a student towards critical thinking at higher levels when you layer them up in steps. Focus on the relationships in the material. Instead of asking only recall items, create questions with analogies that require students to know the relationship between the content, not just the facts. Graphs and tables could be beneficial for visual presentation of these relationships. But remember, even the best critical thinking items don't require critical thinking if you just copy them from your notes or textbook. Make sure you are using different analogies or graphs than what you taught in class. Include reasoning in your answer choices. In addition to choose the right answer, add a second part to the answer choice, the reasoning behind the correct answer. This might increase the number of distractors you provide, but requiring this second piece of analysis can differentiate why the students chose this answer that they did. Change names when possible to avoid simple recall. Students might be able to answer some questions that you intended to assess critical thinking, but they actually just recall it if students had the content knowledge. Personally, I like to make up names for new drugs or disease states that exhibit the characteristics I am testing to see whether students know the actual meaning behind how they work versus just memorizing facts. In addition to multiple choice items, consider adding a few select all that apply, fill in the blank, or essay questions. These take longer to grade but provide additional insight to how your students are learning. After each exam, consider holding an exam review for students to attend and hear your expert rationale for each question and answer. This will model good critical thinking behavior to them and improve their thinking skills. Also, if you allow students to challenge questions from your exams, use this as a learning opportunity for them. Require written evidence-based arguments and primary literature references to let them practice the process of thinking critically. As with any assessment, here are a few tips. Take your time when writing these complex items. It's hard to write this level of item, so start early and give yourself plenty of time for revision. Writing items directly before or after you teach keeps everything fresh in your mind. Align exam items to lecture and course learning objectives and teach at this higher level. You cannot expect students to perform well on higher level questions if you do not teach at this higher level. Get input from your colleagues on items to make sure these items are at the level you want them to be. And remember, reviewers do not have to be content experts. In fact, it might be better if they are not, because they will look at this item with fresh eyes. These types of questions we have discussed are hard, so be sure to give enough time to complete the exam. Bottom line, critical thinking can be assessed in exams when items are carefully crafted. I hope these tips help you to imagine and redesign some of your items to assess higher levels. That about concludes our time. For more information about this topic, please see the resources handout available after you complete the survey.